Now we come to the next session where Ramo is going to get all of us out of our comfort zone, given his topic is what does automation mean in India print and packaging industry? And he's going to talk about different case studies and ask us to brainstorm. So Ramo, all over to you.
Yeah. So good morning. It's nice to be in this room. The earlier sessions I thought were like election rallies. You had to reach out to so many people. This is nicer and easier. The second thing is it's always sort of a pleasure to have a presentation. I mean, any session where Arun is there. I know he'd come to our office on a couple of occasions. We understood, I think, pre-press packaging, I think, to a large extent from him and the ESCO team. I mean, till then there was a misnomer that, workflow is RIP in India. And then, they kind of changed the whole paradigm for that, which is fantastic because it was a technology sort of shift to a large extent. And the other thing, which we came to know, I edit another magazine called Campaign, and I suddenly began to realize that 95% of the big brands are all touching ESCO at some point of time, which is, stupendous because it means a sort of trickle down for the print industry. In terms of what I'm going to try to do over the next few minutes is fairly straightforward. I don't have a PPT. There are two reasons for it. One is I am going to do some data sharing so that you just get a sense of what the industry is thinking and so on. Unfortunately, it's one of those confidential, non-disclosure things, so I can't put that up on, the people who have funded it might sue me, but I think it's valuable that I share that with you simply because I think you get a sense of what the industry. The second thing is I'll be sharing about 7 to 8 case studies. Case studies is a very fancy name. You've seen the presentations, that's the technology sort of driven part of it, but also just to give you a sense of who are the people who are there in the mid-size print industry sector, print and packaging, and what do they want to do next. And I think for them, really they've got stuck. These are typically companies which could be 10 crores, 40 crores, 50 crores, 60 crores, sometimes even 80 crores. They've just reached that level and just got stuck. This is based on some of the travels in the last 3 months. There are macro perspectives, economic indicators, etc. But mainly you can go to their shop floor. So what I'm going to try to do in the second part of this whole is share those case studies and hopefully get you to sort of give me some response. This is a very strange situation that happens to us nowadays when we walk into people's shop floor. Within 10-15 minutes, they turn the table around and say, give us inputs, give us feedback. So I'm hoping that I get technology inputs and feedback from you, which of course the idea is to pass it back to the industry. I'll start off with something. Bad news is always great. So I have a piece of paper here, which I'm going to share with you because I think, again, this is something that... So when I came to Bangalore, I think the first time as Print Week, this was around 2005 when we were sort of planting the seeds for the magazine. The commercial print rates, this is for 1,000 copies, was 2,300, all right? 2009, when I returned again, the rates were... Do you think they went higher, lower? Lower. So it was 1,800. 2 years ago when I was here, 2013, it was 1,500. And day before and yesterday when I was with some commercial printers, the rates are 1,100 and 900. I mean, there's somebody who's operating at about 850 or something. And, with 2 Kamoris, pre-owned, of course, CTP. So it's not as if, it's a run-of-the-mill there's one 4-color, one 5-color. So this is, in a way, when we are talking all technology, when we are talking a lot of this, it ultimately, this is what it sort of boils down to. These are the numbers that the industry is operating. Whether they are fair numbers, I don't think so, because, obviously, there is something that is going completely awry. And commercial print is just one aspect of it. We are finding the same thing in digital signage. We are finding the same thing in narrow web labels. There's really no fair pricing model. We met a couple of the industry veterans, and they said something very interesting, that even rickshawalas have trade unions, whereas printers and packaging guys don't have trade unions, just to negotiate a fair price. So this is a huge concern. Everything, as costs, and this is the rate at which they are operating at. So I just thought I should share that with you. The second thing is that one of the last sort of previous advisory councils, I think I had mentioned the start of this particular unit. And, again on Tuesday when I came in, I visited this plant. It's again in the vicinity of the EFI. Again, a fantastic sort of epitome of what a printer can do. So obviously there are these rates that are functioning, 1100, 1,000, etc. But this is a printing plant which is now doing extraordinary amount of work. It's in a way truly efficient. It's truly turning around. So just to give you a snapshot, they started off in a small shed in one of the suburbs in Bangalore. Today they're doing Bible printing in 50 different languages. So those of you who are going to be traveling to Drupa or any other part of the world, every time you probably open the little drawer next to your cupboard, you'll pick up a Bible. Most of it is actually being printed by a couple of the big players in Bangalore. So that is the sort of contribution that he has. The interesting thing that I'll just give you one happy thing and then I'll share some of the industry data survey. Prior to Bangalore, I was in Delhi and I met a printer called S. Chand. And like Brilliant has repositioned itself as a partner in the Bible production. He doesn't call himself a book printer anymore. He's more or less connected himself with the Bible fraternity, so he's talking to the churches and the various ecumenical, orders that are there in that, and he services that. He is not looking at himself as a book production guy only. So when we went to S. Chand, so S. Chand, as you know, produces textbooks for schools. Some of you, may have nephews, nieces, children who have probably read them. And again, they are on a massive expansion plan. Those of you who've been following the sort of newspapers and the business dailies, they got an infusion of capital, about 27 million from the IFC. IFC is a sister division of the World Bank, and mainly sort of using these funds to ensure that the last textbook reaches every child in India. And they have partnered with S. Chand. So anyway, we were meeting Himanshu, who's the sort of head at S. Chand, and we said, so you're probably the largest book printer in the country and, textbook printer in the country, etc. And he replies saying, no, we are an education solution provider. So there's a clear shift. And this is the kind of positioning, if they're trying to get out of this sort of rut, we are finding a lot of that the language has kind of shifted. So rebranding. And he says, very interestingly enough, that I am a partner to every child for 18 years. So every human being at some point of time for 18 years is touching an S. Chand book. So that's one thing. In terms of the print component, which is still a crucial part of it, they have 60 depots. They're trying to reach out to 1.3 million schools. Their targets are 50 million books, over the next 1 year. These are sort of the big numbers which you should be aware of. But the really incremental changes that they're doing is standardizing print formats. So, if you go into any book depot and pick up textbooks, you will see textbooks of all shapes and sizes. Suddenly, you have these bigger organizations which are consolidating and ensuring that the textbooks are of typical sizes. The second thing is, again, a very small aspect to it, but typically these textbooks used to be dumped into gunny sacks. Now they are sort of palletized into cartons. Process modification, some of that which was in the previous two presentations. So earlier it used to be manual palletizing. Now it is a slightly faster format. Social compliances. I don't know if you've been following the news. There's another massive textbook printer in the north called Nova Publications. The building caught fire. The entire factory was destroyed. It's crores of investments that have gone, the machineries and property. I think there are 2 workers who lost their lives, and primarily a small short circuit which sort of escalated the whole thing and caused this whole thing. So suddenly you're finding that this social compliance issue, at Nova it is a very simple thing. The lane is so narrow that even the material inflow and outflow, I mean, this is the reality if you go there. Production, EBITDA, all that is fantastic. The numbers are sounding very good, but when you actually visit the shop floor, you are completely astounded at how they reach any level of efficiency. That is the reality. We also visited, I'm first going to just give you these 2 or 3 instances. So then another printing unit that we visited, again on an expansion plant, they are based in, again, Noida. They're in a 12-acre plant called IPP. They've just installing a G40. Again, we are finding that, it's typically a 400-450 crore company looking to double. So either go with a technology partner, or definitely, looking at exporting to the North Africa belt. They are in 3 segments: packaging, converting, also in a segment called, book publishing, which was fairly strong for them. And the third is they have now developed, like S. Chand and like, the Brilliant example that I gave you, they have developed a brand called
Paperisto, which is a social stationery brand. So again, at a time when we are thinking that there is a dip in paper, they are actually creating a brand around that, which they are using to promote. So whether it is presence at London Book Fair or its presence at the trade shows in Kenya and Nigeria, this is what they're sort of trying to do. Again, very interesting example of the print part of it is broadly taken care of. What they've done is something, again, quite interesting with the ESCO people. They have integrated that with the, a Dynamics workflow that they have plugged in. So making sure that, I think that's probably a case study for them to probably highlight and escalate, But basically efficiency levels on the shop floor and maximizing the work that they can do on pre-press. So typically all these units you find pre-press and post-press being massive bottlenecks. Again, another plant that we visited yesterday was Rajhans. As those of you, I don't know if you're aware, they've probably gone into investing in flexible packaging. They were into, to some extent, in monocartons and in magazine publishing. They do about 67 to 80 magazines, 67 mainstream and 80 B2B magazines, and they do about 17 newspapers printed in different multiple sites. So they have completely diversified into flexible packaging. Last year they'd invested about 1,000 crores, about 100 crores, and this year they've invested about 60 crores. The capability of converting around 1,000 tons of flexible laminates, which they are capable of. So this is the sort of big picture. The numbers for the industry is also looking good. I mean, this is one sort of dark side of the, if you look at the industry as a pyramid, the bottom half is this, and there is a dirty battle. And on the top of the pyramid, you're finding that people are moving faster. There's greater consolidation, and the growth is, on double digit. And doubling there. What I'm going to do now in the second part, so this is just to give you a snapshot of some of the plants that I visited, and this is where the action is. So again, you have to identify the guys who are really moving fast, the guys who are in status quo mode, the guys who are in denial, and the guys who are probably trying to shut down their unit or sell their unit. So there are these four broad this thing, and the fifth is of course the disruptors who are probably changing the paradigm as each day goes along. This is the survey, which is the confidential survey. So what I'm going to quickly do is just highlight 10 points because I think they're crucial. I mean, when you're, so one of the reasons to share this with you is because I know you all are creating a lot of things which are of great importance and import to the industry. So just to give you a sense of actually what direction the industry is in. So this was something that we conducted over 3 months with about 140 printing companies. The idea was again to do some kind of data sampling. Sam, I'm sorry, some of this will be a repetition for you. You were there at the MMS, this thing. So the 10 big facts was that of the 56% of the respondents, of the 140, 56% of the respondents have only sheet-fed offset setups, and 27% have a hybrid setup of sheet-fed and digital. And that 27% we are finding, obviously post-Drupa, we are going to see a sort of increase in that. So that is one sort of crucial aspect. The second thing is size. Almost all, printing sizes. So of the 140 printing organizations that were reviewed, most of them, the sizes vary from 12 by 18 to 32 to 36. The popular size remains the B2, which is 20 by 28. It still remains the popular. The reason I'm highlighting this is post Drupa 2016, there is a strong sentiment that B2 probably will get phased out from the offset segment. So you might have a lot of second-hand machine, a lot of it will migrate only into the digital segment. So again, this will probably cause a rethink both in terms of what constitutes print and then again how it sort of redefines costing modules within that. So basically this B2 size comprises of 32.8 of all the machine sizes in India as of now, followed by, the next popular size is the 2840 size. And now because of packaging, you're finding some 3040 and so on, on the ascendancy. Then the third question that we sort of asked is, so this is just snapshot numbers to give you an indication, is what is short run? Because again, these are 3 or 4 terms that we keep hearing in India: short run, standard, state of the art, quality. These are sort of broad numbers which everybody uses. You go to the smallest of the small to the biggest of the big. So short run, according to 8% of the organizations, produce less than 10% of jobs with a run length of less than 2,000 copies, and 43% of the organizations that were surveyed said that they produce less than 10% of the jobs with run lengths of less than 1,000 copies. Yeah. in narrow web labels, again, it's interesting that an average run length, 53, and this is anything from 8 color to 10 color to 12 color, 53% of the label print firms, we found the average run length to be between 1,000 to 1,500 running, 5,000 running meters. And only 10% of the organizations have an average run length of about running below 1,000 running meters. Then one asked about their definition of what a short run job was. 14% of the participants said that they believe that a short run can be as low as 1%, while 19% of the participants thought 10 to 150 running meters is an ideal for a short run length job. Again, number 3 is what are the jobs, print jobs typically below the 2,000 copies. So again, just to give you a sense of what's happening in the market. So books, brochures, certificates with variable data. So then you do an offset shell and you have some integration with a laser printer. Leaflets, pharma cartons, labels, leaflets, fashion catalogs. B2B magazines, especially, certainly we are finding a huge amount of, prosperity in the B2B space for the magazine. So certainly there is a magazine only for beer drinkers. There's a magazine only for sort of, turnkey projects. So there is an association for turnkey projects, and they are, they have a very dedicated magazine only for 1,500, 2,000 of their members. Then, crane systems. So these kind of sort of super special magazines, magazine only for gardening appliances. Then there's a magazine, I think, in Gujarat, which is only for funeral rites. So when you sort of die, what are the few things that you need for that, and then what are the rights and what are the kind of processes that you require. Print jobs less than 1,000 copies is magazines, leaflets, coffee table books, brochures, visiting cards, books, letterheads, and stationery and visual aids, for typically for pharma, people who are going out. The other thing that is of importance is which is the media that is popular in India as of now. So this is other than paper and paperboard. We are seeing traction with metal sheet, MetPet, non-tearable plastic sheets, and then plastic sheets with PP, PVC, PET, and textured paper, specialty paper, formats, Tyvek from DuPont. That's again a very strong segment. We are finding that Tyvek's getting used for certificates. There's a printer in Hyderabad, very interesting guy. He makes raincoats out of Tyvek. It's waterproof. So basically for these big, amusement parks, he's actually, so when you go into these big amusement parks, they give you some of these, clothing, and then it's reusable. With Tyvek, I think what he is sort of does is he sells that as, your undergarments. So you wear that, and then that is disposable. So shorts and a kind of branded t-shirt kind of a thing which you wear over your inner garments. So those kind of sort of unique use, and he's again sort of created a special market only out of using Tyvek. Plus I think the entire Bangladesh market, interestingly enough, they are using a lot of it for their ration cards and other kind of social welfare programs. Tyvek lenticular, so typically Fresnel lens and so on, and cold foil. Then again, there's this thing about finishing, which I'll skip. Then in terms of 6 pre-press, again, this is a term that we are seeing, hoping to see a lot of traction in that in terms of Drupa. But the big numbers for CTP is that only 56% have CTP systems in-house, and 44% still outsource their CTP requirements. Okay, so which again, when we talk of all these things, efficiencies, workflows, system management, your file data, etc., how are you going to do this to the best of your ability? 90%, of this is good news for you all, 90% of respondents do not use web to print. A very minuscule percentage of that 10% that do use cross-media elements, URL, QR codes, very, very minuscule. Number 8, 51% of the respondents have invested in a workflow software. Again, definitions of what is a workflow software varies. 41%, only 41% of the respondents have an ERP software, and this is any kind of ERP. This would be, the Renukas, the Params, and all of that. So that again, in Bangalore, I met somebody who uses a platform on the GoDaddy, and it's a basic Excel sheet, but he has got 4 sites, 4 print centers, but that works quite well for him. He has 4 in a way illiterate, untrained people on each side, but he's using that as a sort of estimation software, and at at every 30 minutes they're updating data, which is basically what he wants. He produces something like 7.5 lakhs sheets per site on an average, and this is the mapping of the data that he's doing basis on this very, very simple software. He himself is 8th standard pass, so for him he doesn't want anything more complicated. Turnover something like 11 to 12 crores, and he's looking to grow like many of them. But this is his sort of kamikaze style of operation. So yeah. So typically when this gentleman was asked what does he want to do with his, if he was given an option with a useful ERP software, then he said that improve his finishing automation, improve business automation in terms of forward planning, streamline invoicing and billing. He still has a job ticket and all of that, but still he wants to sort of reduce manual labor, especially for software, and cross-training of staff. Only the last one, only 10% of the respondents use color management software. And again, in terms of color, what we are finding is that jobs vary from single color to 9 colors. And even today, in spite of what everybody says, 44% of the jobs are still have an average of 4 colors. Again, interestingly enough, a lot of people, we are seeing a lot of fully loaded machines coming in 4 color, 6 color with quota. You're doing a lot of work, say, for a pharma or a, L'Oreal type of a brand, and suddenly you find that there is a company alliance or something, an extra logo needs to be added. So again, 8 color machine, and then there's a 2 color machine added because they need to do an extra special color offline. So typical and very peculiar kind of problems that the printers are sort of facing. Again, just quick takeaways, because we were talking to one of the largest ink manufacturers in India called Huber, and they still see huge growth because, in terms of consumable that they have been sort of pumping back into their capacity manufacturing and their usage patterns, they are finding that the market still grows. Surprisingly, India stands poised at, for the Asia Pac market at number 2, higher than China in terms of ink consumption. So again, it's an interesting data that Japan is number 1, India number 2, and China and India is neck to neck in terms of actual ink consumption pattern. Again, the big growth areas are exports, because these are again the macro data. Where is all this print products that are being produced in India going? So 50% the focus is on exports, 30% is flexible packaging, and 20% is food packaging. These are the sort of strong segments in the Huber group of this thing. Again, in terms of print and packaging, what we are finding is that number 1, 44% of printers have reported a growing number of conventional print jobs. Number 2, which I think is again crucial, 50% of printers are reporting declining conventional print run length. Nobody, this is a standard thing, nobody wants to keep inventories, turnarounds have become sort of sharper, and mainly brands are looking at sort of relaunching their products. And I think the most crucial thing for a lot of printers is 48% of printers have reported declining conventional print lead times. The other thing that we are finding, that's takeaway 3, is reducing production cost and improving efficiencies. More than 50% of the printers are talking about expanding to new print applications or service. Almost all the printers we talk to, by and large, say that print for them is no longer x-axis, y-axis. That they say that print is always x-axis, y-axis, and there has to be that z-axis. What that z-axis? It could be data integration, it could be, you go for a 3D option, you go for doming, or lenticular, but there has to be that, or variable data, but that z-axis is the crucial thing. By itself, otherwise x and y axis, meaning then you're back to this sort of rut. Expand to geographic reach. Again, we are finding a lot of printing plants that are coming up in new sites. So again, last year we were mapping some data from the big 4, that is KBA, Heidelberg, Kamori, and Ryobi. And when we mapped that, we found that only 25 or 26% were first generation investors in a new machine. The rest of them, it is always a second or a third or a fourth machine being added on in new factories. So it is from the existing sort of core group. Almost less than 10% want to expand to new non-print services areas of that. And in terms of exiting the business, surprisingly, in spite of all the doom and gloom, we found it was about 3.5% of printers who actually say that we want to shut shop. I mean, you walk into most printing houses, people are a little concerned about where and how this whole thing is unfolding. But if you ask them, are you going to exit business, or, if there's no second generation, third generation, they say no. So this would be, some of them have gone into real estate, for example, in a big way, hospitality. I mean, these are typically, industries into which they're diversifying. So, yeah. So real estate is huge because some of them have been traditional families, 75 years, 100 years, and with capital in, real estate in a city. So they encash. Takeaway 4 is business-related questions related to green awareness, certifications, accreditations, lean manufacturing, improving plant layouts. That is something that we are generally finding that the plant layouts have improved substantially. So either it's, say if it's a book plant, then, they're talking to the Kolbuses and the Mueller-Martinis, and they are ensuring that it's a reasonably good manufacturing, now anywhere between a 50 to 60 crore company. And at every stage, they have been investing constantly. They've been diversifying into business. So as I mentioned, they started off as a very tiny screen printing unit. Then they do labels, narrow web. They do offset. They also have diversified and used, things like Fresnel lens and so on. Now they're looking at rigid boxes. They do doming. So mainly a very premium kind of decorativeness using cartons and labels. He knows that there has got to be a technology investment, but he knows that the company needs to do R&D to stay ahead of the game. His aim is to be the sort of next Pragati in terms of just being inventive, innovative, etc. And the key to all this, he realizes, is hardcore automation. But all of this comes at a cost. So, and obviously they're a debt-free company like a lot of these self-employed companies. So his question was, what next? Where does they're good to go for the next 3 to 4 years. They pick up all the international awards. They pick up the LMAI awards. They pick up the FESPA awards. They pick up a lot of these big international awards, and they're a branded company. They've created a solid sort of reputation in the market, both with their customers and in terms of what they create in terms of innovativeness. What next for them? They say that if we want to double our capacity, double our sort of production, double our turnovers, what does an Annie Graphics do next? Is that clear? Yeah. Can I go to the next one? The next is again a label printing firm. It's a company called Update. Again, a very, very low profile organization. Today they are sort of in a 5-acre plant in Gurgaon, which is where they've built a plant. Again, a very, very nice plant, completely sort of dust free, completely sort of, litter free. They have about 120 people who are part of their team. So each of these, they're manpower heavy in terms of all these organizations that I'm going to be talking about. And all of them, I won't keep mentioning the turnovers, all of them are 50, 60 crores. Interesting background to this is the 4th generation of printers in this firm. The founder of this company was somebody called DC Chadda. And in 1924, he was in Kobe in Japan. And basically interestingly enough, doing work in ceramic printing in Kobe in Japan and transfer printing. Then from Tokyo, he went to Rawalpindi, and then of course, post-partition, they shifted to Delhi and started off in a very small unit in Narayana. So what do they do today? So Narayana, again, this is the other story where you find that they were all, locked in 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet units, and now suddenly they've all gone out of the city, sold land and massive factories. I mean, they're truly factories in the real sense of what we've seen in, we see in Europe and Australia and so on. So Update basically does FMCG, lot of durables, distillery work, personal care, and filmic decoratives. It's basically managed by a father and a son, and they have a sort of a raft of 8 color presses. Filmic decorative. So it's like self-adhesive, but it's a filmic base on which you print. Again, debt-free, and they're proud of that. Cell-phone company. They do a lot of R&D, but R&D in very, very interesting spaces. Things like plates, dies, molds, toolings, which was an area of negligence among a lot of the narrow web label printers. They do some amount of work in terms of material development. Things like consumable cost, repeatability of a job, and online inspection. So that's their saga. They've moved into Gurgaon, I think, about a year or 2 ago, and obviously they have space to expand. It's a beautiful plant in terms of being landscaped, and they take care of their working staff, etc. So this is there. Again, both Annie Graphics and Update, I must add, is like I said, it's both a father and son unit where the sons are now, in a way, the next in line in terms of taking over. Technology-wise, they're savvy. They've gone and studied abroad. One of them's worked in a financial management company in New York. Another guy's worked in a packaging development setup in London, learned the tricks of the trade, come back and implemented some of these things, you know, procedural things. So that's update. Is that sort of okay? Yeah. Then we have somebody called Utility. This is, again, rebranding. I mean, for me, they would be a checkbook printer, but when I met them, they said we are a document solution provider. And our specialty and niche is data re-engineering. So that's what they do. Two brothers and a partner, IIT grads, nothing to do with the printing industry, saw an opportunity and came into the city. The plant is in outskirts of, it's in Sarita Vihar in Delhi, and basically it's a 4-city operation. So the mother plant is in Delhi, Mumbai is where they have a sort of support plant, and then because of the nature of the banking business, they have a smaller plant in Calcutta and in Bangalore, I think. Mainly a lot of IT focus, because as some of you know, a lot of data components in any kind of, you know, cards and checks and so on. So typically 23 to 24 highly confidential, you know, data aspects which are being handled by them. And for them, the boom began, as you know, in 2000 when checks in India started getting personalized. Earlier it was blank checks and, you know, and so then the personalized checks, and then the crucial issue that started happening post that was the concern with fraud and forgery. So obviously they've developed softwares, again, interestingly enough, an opportunity for, you know, EFI, but they've developed their software in-house because of their IIT background. So they have a couple of young IT guys who are sort of part of this. Plus, of course, they use MICR, RGTS, then they have this banking certification, which is apparently very expensive, but it's called the 27001 220B. So again, that's something that all these guys are, you know, certification heavy in terms of whatever the mandated thing, all of them, because again, international exposure and all of that. So in terms of big numbers, Utility does 900 million checkbooks at the moment. So just to give you the industry structure, you have Sheshashai and Manipal on the top, and number 3 is Utility. So the question is, how do we become the next Sheshashai, or how do we become the next Manipal? That's number 1. Again, 2 bits of interesting trivia about Utility is they did Aadhaar. Of course, you know, Aadhaar changed a lot of sort of hands, but they did Aadhaar in Aadhaar cards, you know, and the laminates that happened. Aadhaar in 9 states. And the other interesting thing, for how many of you use Book My Show? So Utility is the guys who do the, you know, the printing receipts for Book My Show. So that's a huge order. Of course, now I'm told that 2 of the big Chinese guys are sort of coming in. So now the interesting question with them is that in Manesar, they have built a new factory, and the factory is completely empty because now they don't know what to do, whether they continue in the checkbook and cards part. So they also do fulfillment for smart cards, but they say that there's no future in that, and the market is sort of saturated. So they have a sort of 40,000 square feet plant in Manesar. Like a lot of printers, they want to go packaging, but obviously clients and the whole workflow. So what next for them? Again, interesting thing, because we were talking to one of their banker partners. So they, I think, partner with something like 23 banks and then, of course, distribute. But they have a thing of about 500 million check leaves, out of which a sort of error rate is about 0.1 in a million, something like that. That is the sort of error. So these are the sort of levels of efficiency in terms of data management. In terms of printing per se, if you actually visit their plant, it's quite crude. It's basic offset, a couple of Rototechs, and then a little bit of the digital machines to do the variable data and, you know, all the other support stuff. But it's mainly how they handle the data, which is sort of impressive. And one of the things they boasted, I mean, of course, IITians tend to boast about everything, is that they are capable of handling the data better than the banks themselves, you know, so that we can handle data for them because, they, you know, as in your bank dealings, you know how it is, yeah. Please. Which one? The IIT one, is it? They do smart cards. They do only smart cards. Yeah. Because I'll tell you later what the yeah. So are we okay? Can I go to the next one? Yeah. So the next one is again a printer called Kumar Printers. Again, located in Manesar, which is where you have the Maruti, Honda, and Dentsu plants. I mean, just for those of you. So that's Haryana. And again, they have their own land. So Manesar again is an interesting space because I think last couple of years ago, there were no printers there, and suddenly I think in the last 2.5, 3 years, you have about 25 new printing plants that have set up, and again, proper factories. I think out of that 3 plants, this one and the next one are their own property, but a lot of it is leased lands. So typically, a lot of guys who are providing spare parts and automobile component parts to these 3 big daddies, they have vacated because of the sort of glut in the market, and then you have printing plants that have come in. So Ravescan and so on, if you're sort of familiar with some of these names. So Kumar Printers in that sense is the archetypal, tortoise as compared to the hare. So they're very, very slow moving in that sense. Again, there's a son called Sandeep Bhargav. He's part of a sort of alliance partnership with 6 technology packaging firms around the world. So that is how they get their sort of and at the moment they do something like 1,000 metric tons of conversion. The interesting thing about the patriarch of the organization, which is M.K. Bhargav. So the Bhargavs are a well-known name, and you have certain families which are well-known names, Dotes, Bhargavs, etc. So Bhargavs, you will certainly come across a lot of Bhargavs in the industry. There will be a Bhargav in Calcutta, there will be a Bhargav in Lucknow, Kanpur. There will be, of course, 3 Bhargavs in Delhi itself. So the patriarch was someone who started off labor. So this was again, predates to World War II. Then started off, learning on the job, and then setting up this little sort of empire and factory. The interesting thing is these are guys who did labor themselves and worked for others, and so therefore you find a qualitative difference in those organizations where a laborer has actually gone on to become the CEO or the chairman or the managing director. I mean, small things, but clean food, better food, how workers are treated, etc. So these 3 or 4 plants that I sort of illustrated, I mean, these are things we should take for granted. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Again, interesting, like a lot, they were probably the first plant in the country to have an ink making kitchen, which was, they set the sort of standard in that. And again, very interesting because, it's a small component. It's about 2%, 3%. In case of certain value-added packaging jobs, maybe 4 to 5%. But it's probably the component that can cause the most danger. They sort of pride on themselves of having a consistency of 1 sheet to 1 lakh sheets, standard minimum tolerance, no shade variations. The main thing that they're talking of right now is, how they've been impacted by the unfair pricing, or rather the disadvantage of unfair pricing. And
So 1 sheet to 1 lakh.
Yeah.
Abundance of.
No, this is to make sure that there's no shade to shade variation, there's no sort of color defects and so on. So that sort of thing is what they pride themselves on. Yeah. And the mantra that they have is no shortcuts in printing. Okay. For a lot of us who have followed Kumar Printers over the last 8 to 10 years, we've always thought that they were poised to become the next TCPL or the Parsons in terms, simply because of their meticulousness to the kind of work. But somehow they've in a way remained at a certain kind of a plateau. They have very, very good press lines. They have very, very good sort of integrated die cutters, folder glues. So the plant is like a manufacturing plant should be. And yet they have sort of plateaued and remained at this 750,000 metric tons of turnover. Why? And they have space to grow and develop further. So everything is in place for them, technology partners, but they have remained at that plateau for the last 3 to 4 years. So what can a packaging converting plant such as Kumar Printers do? Yeah. I just have a couple more, then we can stop. The next one is a book printing firm. It's called Swan. Again, this is a company which is, I think, approximately 115 years old. Again, started off in Lahore, Firozpur, and these were people in those days mainly doing a lot of jobs for the military, so obviously the British military, and their sort of print requirements. So they had, I think, 3 or 4 sites, and the Malhotras who run that plant, because of the Malhotra family, were owning these multiple sites and ensuring that there was a print requirement at each of these depots. Then, of course, post-partition, it got downsized, and then the more inefficient depots shut down, and they got relocated into Delhi, and then because they were sort of refugees from partition, they were given a special sanction and fund and etc. to set up Swan again. So Swan was kind of reborn. Again, interesting because when the initial dispension was done under the sort of partition thing, they were given about 250 or 300 square yards of area in Delhi in one of the old settlement areas, and that's how they sort of took off. Today they have sort of 4 sites. I think Manesar, Okhla, Greater Noida, and one more. So 4 big sites, out of which I think 2 they leverage in terms of land, and the others where they've built this plant. Again, a huge plant. It's about, I think, around 1,80,000. It's multi-layered with a basement. They recently invested in 2 8-color perfectors, Heidelbergs, second-hand. Then, of course, a slew of post-press equipment to back this up. They do a lot of textbooks. They do a lot of children's books, and interestingly enough, they were at the London Book Fair, and they came back with excellent feedback that after a sort of doom and gloom of last 6 to 7 years, everybody said books are going down, there's a dip, etc. This London Book Fair, there was actually a huge sense of optimism by the main publishers, so whether it was trade publishers, whether it was STM, whether it was academic publishing, etc. So huge boom in that segment, and of course, because their expertise is children's, books. So if you go to like shows like Bologna in Europe, you find actually the kind of expertise that is. So Swan sort of plays in that kind of a space. Again, their sort of mantra is more or less no external finance, no debts. What they have is like most of the other companies that I've been telling you about when they say debt free, it's mainly these kind of technical loans. Again, very interesting, although it's an owner. So it's, I think, 3 brothers and their children, some of them who have been trained in print management courses in Germany, at Rochester, etc. And I think 1 or 2 of them have very consciously been post-education being to send to a shipping and logistics company. A lot of books has got to do with distribution and warehousing and so on. So as part of that education, they were made to sort of study in these kind of organizations. Earlier, they used to do a lot of work with government sector, capital issue forms and diaries. And as you can imagine, these 3 segments, there's been a huge dip. So obviously they got affected, and a lot of their work in terms of production shifted to books and children's book. They work as it's again interesting process. It's almost like a panchayat that runs Swan. So a lot of the other organizations that I've been telling you, they're like individuals. There'll be a father or a son or one senior strong voice that dictates everything. Here it's almost like a collective, and yet there is a sort of method in the madness. Interestingly enough, there are also a bunch of guys who get goosebumps when they go on the press. I mean, again, this sort of thrill that sometimes these are like the old-fashioned printers. When they're actually running a press, they get a thrill. It's like driving a F1 car or something. I mean, you have to meet these guys to know what I'm talking about. Very difficult to explain this, yeah. So they do that, and when I had gone to their unit, they're actually done a very interesting job for one of the export players, and they turned, so it was I think a critical job. They were given about 45 days. First 3 days they were clueless in terms of what to do. Then they created a job chart which was actually put onto the floor of the entire factory, so that the workers could also literally be walking on the flow chart. And then they turned around this job, which was sort of done in about 28 days or 29, and then of course the delivery and dispatch and so on. Again, very, very interesting things. They've done certain jobs. I know a job had gone to again a very prestigious printer in Delhi called Lustra, and it was a friend who's from a fairly prestigious brand, and they wanted to get this job. It was 2 greens, and I think there was a problem with the original files with the yellow and blue, and I think also the problem was they wanted to print on uncoated, and Lustra, in spite of all their technology capabilities, skills, etc., couldn't deliver it. And strangely enough, Swan did it. And again, this is in a way you can say jugaad, but also in a way just understanding machines better. So they used one of their 5-color machines, didn't run any colors in the first 2 machines, and what is called vario printing. So it basically removed all the fluff and the hickeys from the paper because it was uncoated Indian paper from one of the B-grade mills. And on the second 2 colors, they ran the greens, 2 separate sort of these things of greens, and they obviously got the targets absolutely right. So little things like that. Sometimes they're just able to come up with solutions for jobs which are tricky. So again, same question, what next? So just to give you a sense, they have 33 printing units. Like I said, a lot of these 8-color perfectors and folding case makers, etc. And again, unlike a lot of printers, also very unflashy people. I mean, they pride on themselves, on like if they have a wristwatch, it will be a very simple HMT kind, old HMT watch, which was probably purchased at 300 rupees or something. So in that sense, a certain kind of a simplicity. The other thing is also not having assistants. Like I mentioned, these are printers who, when they are told there's a problem on the press, they can handle it themselves. A lot of Indian printers, for instance, cannot run the presses themselves. They have to delegate. In their case, to a large extent, it's 0 assistants. So whether, if you go into their cabin and you ask for a coffee, they'll make the coffee for you, which is nice, in its own way. But again, stuck stuck in a rut. Where do books go next? Where do Swan go with this massive investment in Manesar? Yeah. Okay, I have two more. Shall I carry on or yeah? There's a company called Arun Packaging, again dates back to Calcutta 1967, and over there they were handling power looms for the jute market, and it's today they're about 180 employee strength. They're based in Navi Mumbai, 2 factories. Arun Packaging. So they're known as Sri Arun Packaging, so SAP. Yeah. So 180, 200 employees. Again, interesting market share. So they have 60% pharma, which is monocartons, and they also do, to some extent, some inserts, and then 25% is FMCG. And then they have an interesting market share in what is called blade wrappers. So, I mean, not the Gillette, but if those of you who shave the old-fashioned way, Malhotra, you remember the brand? So the wrappers that Malhotra blades go into. So typically your barber saloons and so on. So these guys, they do something like 25 crores to 40 crores of those blade wrappers for them. That kind. And if you see that, I think the price of that, I mean, I don't recall, but it must be 75 paisa or so you can imagine the value that they are getting out of making wrappers for something that costs 75 paisa in the market. Yeah. They came to Bombay, and interestingly enough, so the SAP is sort of headed by 2 brothers, the Bhotikas. The Bhotikas are cousins of the Kejriwals, both Parsons Packaging and Parsons Graphics. So they leveraged that little bit of family connection, and in those days, both the Parsons were together, and they were doing what is called playing cards. So they started getting into the carton box business, small, low machine base in a typical Mumbai Gala and Todi industrial estate, not more than 350 square feet of area, etc. And then that's how they began. So again, the genesis of a lot of these presses, typically litter press, single color offset, little bit of hand punching, etc. and then growing. Today they have these 2 factories which are, I think, about 80,000 square feet each. They're probably one of the best paymasters in the market. There are also certifications, a fair degree of automation. So again, we asked the Bhotikas, because at that time this question was coming. So each of these people we've asked, what does automation mean for you? So he said, automation for me means a mechanism where we can have fair prices in the market. So again, a son who has gone and studied for 3 years or 2 years in Germany, plus of course interned in 2 factories over there. The reason I'm also sharing is that they've again reached at a plateau, and in the monocarton space, in certain segments, there is a little bit of a bloodshed in terms of pricing. So one of the things that they've started off is a group called Carton Forum. Again, this is something you should probably be aware of. So these are basically the monocarton and players in folding carton players in Western India. There are about 45 or 50 of them. Basically for the last...
Welcome back. So after not so heavy lunch or heavy lunch, I'm sure you're all ready to listen to the summary session. So definitely we have heard a lot today, not just from our own EFI folks, but also from our advisors and the ecosystem players. You guys had spent around an hour discussing on specific topics. So it would be a great opportunity for the other rooms also to know what got discussed. So we will try to do a quick summary. So I'll call upon Asha to help us summarize what got discussed in her room on gaining competitive advantage in the industry using automation.
Thank you, Madhulika. Our group started brainstorming on whether automation is an encroachment of human labor or a tool for innovation. And there was a unanimous agreement that the benefits of automation far outweigh the challenges or the barriers or the disadvantages for that matter. And then we went on to discuss what are the barriers or challenges that we face when we have to introduce automation before and during the process. And we also discussed what are the possible solutions. And some of them that we discussed were again very unanimous. One was the cost constraints, because not many organizations can afford huge investments in automation. But the possible solution to that is to create awareness through training forums, to explain to businesses on how automation can actually pay back in multiple ways. The idea is also to help customers realize the benefit by projecting the benefits of the automation, cost reduction or increased productivity, and convince them on the automation concepts. And the third solution was possibly a phased out implementation where the organizations don't feel the pinch of heavy costs at one point of time that could motivate them to go in for automation. And the second barrier that was again unanimously agreed was the fear of job losses. But this is a matter of a perspective. Job losses are bound to be there when there is automation, but there is another way of looking at it, which is the positive way of looking at it. The jobs that were being done, the mundane jobs that were being done by human workforce are now being replaced by machines, which only means that the workforce have now the time and space to think big, raise the bar for themselves, and engage themselves in more value-added jobs in the organization. Of course, there's also a responsibility on the part of the organization to train them to be able to do the skilled jobs as against the unskilled jobs, which machines can easily substitute. There's also a responsibility on the individuals to keep abreast of new technologies so that there will be jobs even in automation, mainly to interface between automation, artificial intelligence, and human workforce. And so job losses will never be a problem. It's just the way of looking at it and raising the bar ourselves to be able to think bigger value-added jobs in the organization. And the third challenge was the mindset, the traditional mindset that doesn't allow people to embrace technology. This is something that we felt the ownership has to start at the top from the organization. First of all, to train the people in the organization on how automation can benefit the organizations and thereby also the employees. Help them to realize that it's not going to result in job losses, but they are going to be used more productively elsewhere. And once we involve the workforce in the process of automation right from the beginning, the implementation process is going to become a lot more easier because there's going to be an involvement and enthusiasm and motivation in the entire workforce to achieve the benefits of the automation or the implementation of automation. And the fourth challenge that was also discussed was integration. When automation is done in parts, probably it will not yield the desired results. Only when the automation gets integrated amongst different modules, we'll start to see the benefits. So the ability to see the ability to visualize the benefits of automation is also very important. We also discussed on what are the activities that cannot be automated. Some of those activities are the ones that require creative work, or the ones that need emotional touch, which is like in a sales function, a face-to-face interaction with a customer makes a huge difference because of the personal touch. So maybe in a sales function, a totally automated digital marketing may not be the right solution. An integrated traditional marketing and digital marketing could be a good solution. Also, probably automation will not work in areas where the activities cannot be programmed. So those are the activities where manual labor it becomes very essential. So it's a matter of evaluating right in the beginning on what activities can derive benefit through automation and what cannot, and then align the automation plan with the business strategy and then proceed with the process of implementation. These were the main points discussed in our discussion.
Just a quick comment on the whole issue of job losses and all that. I mean, Ramu clearly started his discussion with the bad news. with the bad news that the rates for so-called mundane stuff keeps falling. And if you look at, mundane is the one that is most amiable for automation. Anything new and still evolving is not something you can automate yet. So if you look at that, right, without automation, it results into wastage, mistakes, delays, everything that in that environment of falling prices means your business is going to go out of business.
Absolutely.
So how will that save your job? If the business itself goes out of,
Right.
then you are anyways going to lose jobs. So
You're not going to be the business at all, so.
So instead of looking at that on a idealistic platform of, the business is anyways going to continue, then it's a matter of saving jobs and not saving jobs. It's better to look at it as, it's fundamentally first save the business, which should give, the workers more continuity in terms of jobs.
Job security. And also, I think it's no longer a matter of choice, it's absolute necessity to keep pace with what competition is doing, and I don't think it's a matter of choice for any organization.
How do you deliver on those 900 or 850 rupees prices without automation? It's not going to be possible.
And business is going global. In order to achieve international standards, we have to get into automation, otherwise there will not be uniformity in the or consistency in the quality and specs.
Right. The other thing I think Arun mentioned in his discussion, as the runs get smaller and smaller, you have to manage so many different jobs. So the setup time, the changeover time, all that keeps going incrementally higher, and in that environment, even more mistakes happen. So if you take that paradigm of smaller jobs to the ultimate extreme, kind of like the one book factory or one t-shirt factory or one whatever factory, in that environment, it's impossible to do that manually. They would have to go from order to production to even logistics in an automated manner.
Yeah.
So what in short I would say was use the same resource but in a much more productive way rather than what you do today completely manual. The manual things where the operator skill is really required and put the rest of the things on the system or the machines to do it.
Yeah.
So use the same resource instead of replacing a resource, use the same resource but in a much more.
So I mean, if you look at, Ramu, you will agree with this. Most of the business owners, they feel so inundated with the interrupts and the problems fighting fires on a day-to-day basis that they don't really have time to extricate themselves to think of what's next. And that's why those problems are coming, you're seeking broader help because they are so buried with the day-to-day fires. But they cannot step back and say, so where is my specialization? Where is my differentiation? What should I be? How should I be increasing, growing my business, improving my margins, etc. They are just, this problem happened, that problem happened, that problem happened, the time is gone. So I think as those problems reduce, people are going to get the opportunity to sort of put some mental bandwidth on more critical questions, more proactive questions about their business.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asha. This gives a very good perspective and it helps all the team here understand, what's the advantage and challenges that one face when going for automation. So we were having discussions with the advisors and discussing about the theme, saying what is going to be the theme this time. And Prasad volunteered and said that, being a customer, I would really like to know when is my machine going to get serviced? I need something automated. I need some kind of alert. So he said, we are so busy doing our work every now and then. Unless and until we get those alerts, it would be very proactive. So what does EFI have in place? So can we talk about it? So, and Sam and Ranjit, everybody brainstormed and there was really good solutions that EFI could provide or think of. So I would call upon Ranjit to talk about ECC in service automation. So Ranjit, over to you.
Thanks, Madhu. We have been talking about production automation mainly in the morning sessions, but for automation to succeed, the machines should work first. So if the machines breaks down, what should happen? How can we bring them back quickly online and continue with automation or efficiency? So that was the main topic. So we basically looked at 3 levels of maturity of servicing machinery. So the first one is basically what people normally do when something breaks down. You take it to a service center and get it repaired. So that really is not going to work in growing businesses, because it affects there is a huge loss in productivity. It increases the cost and all of that. So clearly that's not what we would like to take in terms of servicing this machinery in printing. The second level is really, it's already in place today in automotive industry and many other machine industry, is preventative maintenance. So, either in terms of certain number of months, like time, fixed time, or based on the usage, certain parts in the machinery will get replaced. So that's how it happens in mostly car industry and all. So that's something that is going on in the printing industry as well, in terms of servicing based on a timely schedules, or changing parts based on their lifetime and all of that. So that was another level. And the third, and which is really the most advanced level that's actually happening nowadays, is on predictive maintenance. So based on collecting tons of data from the machines, using software, you predict if certain failures are going to happen for certain components. So in fact, in EFI, we are actually we have started that effort, and we are seeking Prasad's help, and he has been very helpful and supportive to help us gather data from his printers. So it's just in the beginning stages, but we think that this has huge potential, because printing is one of the machinery industry, but it has been proven in many other industries already, where heavy machinery or expensive machinery is involved. So these were the 3 topics, and the good thing is that EFI is already into some of this with some of our cloud and machine learning kind of applications. And then of course Prasad is also a customer. He's an advisor, but he's also a customer. He brought up some pain points, and then looks like whatever vision that EFI has is going to address most of those scenarios or pain points. So that's in a nutshell, that's what we covered.
Yeah. Was, in the first place, you try to prevent failures from happening, and there is no real. And you do that by scheduling maintenance only when it is relevant, as opposed to doing maintenance only when it's relevant, as opposed to some schedule that is a generic average across the worst case scenario or whatever, which leaves too much life of a part on the table. But also, when the failure does occur, today it's a very inefficient process. Right. You have to send the engineer on site. He has to gather data. Based on that, they have to figure out what might have gone wrong. Then they have to order the appropriate parts and whatnot, and then make a second visit to do that. A lot of time, a lot of expense is incurred by all the parties. So the other thought is what is already playing out in the IT world, where you virtually visit your machine, right, and be able to diagnose it remotely, so that when you do send a technician on site, it's one and done. They come with the right parts, they know exactly what to do, etc.
So that's the remote diagnostics piece that, so EFI has already rolled out that to one of our printer platform, HS platform. So, so we are in that domain already, So that's pretty much what we covered. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjit. So before moving on to next topic, so Prasad, what are your thoughts or comments?
It's a brilliant topic that we actually brought up. ESCO gave a very pictorial presentation. It's all about the front-end processes. But this particular thing, when you actually automated every damn thing for production, your aim is to get the final output and then pack and send it out. It's all processed automated. That's what is our ambition is all about. So in between, there's one particular problem that no one thought was, your machine is done, what do you do? Everything is automated, machine is not functioning. So you need to automate your machine functioning first before you automate the rest of them. So that is what is that Ranjit is talking about. So then you have covered every damn thing in the entire process. So now you know that what is aimed, the output is completely going to go in time. So the service part is pretty important for the functioning of the machine. And that need to be automated. I think the EFI has covered a topic completely now. I'm very happy about that.
One thing left, Prasad. Automating the process of getting customers.
Oh, that is another big subject, how to do that. I think Steve can give us some ideas how to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Prasad. So after going through the holistic thing, saying that it's not just automating the process, but also automating the service so that we prevent breakdown. So that's a very good perspective. So moving on to the next topic, I'm told that in this room, when there was a discussion, it was very much between sales of EFI versus sales of ESCO, and there was a lot of discussion going on. So having said that, we would like to call Balaji to summarize what got discussed in automation advantage for customer perspective. Thank you.